It's time to make a concrete countertop for my oak cabinets that I built. So I'm going to make a video of this. Here's the tools and the material. I need. I'm using a 3/4 melamine to make the surface of the concrete countertop is going to be upside down. So I made these cabinets out of oak and the bar out of oak, and want to make a countertop like this. This is for the sink. That's going to go over there. Already did that. And the one back in the back is the bathroom. I already did that one and stained it with acid stain. Those are the products I used, concrete coatings. So turned out pretty good. I'm not going to use the same colors for the next one. So again, made a pattern upside down, formed it, poured it, using just regular quickcrete I've got left over from another build. I guess I had to cut the floor out of this basement project to lay the plumbing, the drain line, so I had lots of concrete left over, so that's what I'm using. And I'm going to make this one-piece countertop, which is going to be 92 inches long and 46 inches wide with a little bit of a cutout there. So I've cut these 1.5 inch strips as my edging for the mold. It's going to be 1.5 inch thick concrete with reinforcements, rebar, and fiberglass mesh, and some fiberglass in the concrete mix. I used this long trim board to make a guide for cutting this one long piece. 46 inches wide is the longest you can get if you're using a 4x8 piece of melamine. Melamine is 49 inches wide and 1.5 inch strip cut, and then 2 3/4 edges make the maximum width 46. So I'm gonna try to video going through this as I go, so we'll see how I can piece it all together. I've cut all my 1 by 3/4 width melamine, 1.5 inch tall, cut all the lengths to the right length according to the plan there, setting the depth on my jig here so that we're going to screw the boards down to the melamine. So I use the factory cut edge for the first edge. It's the straightest. Use the straight edge anyway to try to make sure, but line everything up with the edge. And obviously you want your corner squares, your corners square. So you gotta get that using the clamp, hold it down, drill and screw. And getting this corner square, I actually went with a 1/16 under 46 inches because of the saw blade width of cutting off the 1.5 inch strip. So and I am going outside to inside on the measurement to make it easy. So I'm at a 1/16 under 46 3/4, so that'll make it easier, but it'll all just make the overhang at the edge of the counter just a 1/16 less. No big deal. And if you notice, I'm making this a mirror image of what it's going to be because we're going to flip it over. But the cutout is on this side of the cabinet, but I'm framing it on this side of the countertop so that it flips this way to this way. And you have to do a mirror image so it works out. Just have to think about it. Got it all laid out, screwed down. Everything came out, I believe, within 1/16 of my dimensions, and everything's pretty square. Worked my way around from the main long edge back down the wall side also before I finished this center part, but it still came out really square and within a 1/16 for sure. And let's see, I radiused the corners, anything, so an outside corner on the pattern is going to be an inside corner on the countertop. You can see it, so I used some 80 grit and 220 grit sandpaper, a little sanding block to put me a radius. It's going to be the inside radius of that. The outside radiuses here on these corners will be done with silicone caulking. I got the black silicone caulking. Makes it easier to see what you're doing on the white melamine. So that's I think that's a good trick. So we'll see. Yeah, the corners, don't want a sharp corner. Stress concentration, just in case this thing wants to crack. That'll help minimize that. All right. And one other thing too, you want to put some masking tape over top of all these holes, because when I get concrete down in them, they're really bare to get out. The screws are. So this is the first countertop that I'm actually putting masking tape on the holes. The rest of them, they were bare to get out because they get filled with concrete. And while I was at it, I went ahead and made two 11 by 12 squares just to use for maybe just testing my stain, what color I want, and who knows, might be used as a end table or stepping stones or something. And it's a good point here, if you drill too close to the end, you'll split. And so I had the middle one done, but I was off on my mark, so I re-drilled too close to the end and it split. But no big deal, it's not going to matter so much on this. Just be careful. All right, I'm all cleaned, vacuumed everywhere inside, and all cleaned up, ready to do my caulking. You may have seen this little gadget at the beginning, but that's how I'm going to smooth the radius of the caulking. So it leaves a pretty good radius, maybe 1/4 inch, 3/8 maybe. I'll do that on all the outside, and I'll use a smaller, like a Sharpie pen or something, to smooth out the radius next to the wall over there, and next to the other little counter that's going to span those two. That'll be made from wood. Anyway, so that'll help smooth it, and then you come back and you scrape it. I'll show you in the rest of the video. Scrape what you don't need of the caulking off. All right, the caulking's done, and hopefully I can get a good video of what this does. You can see the large radius, and it smooths it out pretty good, but leaves this line where the ball, you press pretty hard so that you separate the two lines, the radius, and then whatever's left outside the line you just scrape off later with the razor blade, and it seemed to work pretty good. I'm terrible at caulking. If you're better at caulking than I am, then maybe you can do it a different way, but that's just the way that I've done it. And I ran out of black and should have done the good parts with the black instead of trying to do everything, but I think it'll work out pretty good. And when it dries, I'll scrape, and then maybe come back and catch the corners, because the corners seem to pull from the pocket. It doesn't leave a nice spherical corner. It's kind of goofy, so I'll probably go back in after some of it dries and fix the corners. But anyway, overall looks pretty good. I did the same thing on the sink counter, and I'll show you. So those radiuses came out to be kind of like this. Is with concrete, you know, and you can get some bubbles and pits and stuff, but overall I think it came out pretty good. The inside maybe better, so it's kind of hard to tell on video, but anyway, concrete radius turned out pretty good. A real quick view of taking this caulking to the next step, next level. So with the razor knife, you just come in and slice the edge off like it's butter right up to the little white line that was created. Pretty simple. I'll do that all the way around. Leaves a nice little edge on the bottom like that. Come back and clean up even more of that little black line. Here's all the caulking joints all trimmed and ready to go. You can see pretty good way to get pretty nice straight lines on your counter corners. But I definitely used plenty of caulk, so I got a lot left over and it's made a mess, but it'll clean up. I'll actually come back with some mineral spirits on a little paper towel or something, and it will pick up and clean up all the little excess black you see on the edges. I'll clean off the whole thing, all the surfaces with that, make sure there's no residue left that's going to get into the concrete. And I'm pretty much ready to pour, mix and pour. I might touch up a couple of corners or something with the caulking, make sure I don't have any pits or rough edges. I've stained my counters now. Wanted to do that before I put the countertop on, just to make it easier. I moved this big form out of the way. So now I've got the rebar laid out where I think the highest stresses might be when we're moving the countertop around. I'm going to have to flip it over, like I said, so it's going to take 3 or 4 people to do that. I want to strengthen it lengthwise with the long pieces and strengthen it where the counter ends and the countertop overhang begins. So that's 10 inches. It's going to be a 10-inch overhang. Here I got that 10-inch mark penciled in here. So I want the center of these 1-foot pieces right there to strengthen where that moment load is going to be if somebody wants to decide to sit on the countertop or something on the overhang. Let's see, I've also put a few pieces here to help support the corners along with the mesh. Don't know if that's 100% necessary, but I did it because my bathroom countertop that I showed you earlier cracked in the corners. So when I reinforced the sink countertop with this stuff, there was no cracking going on with in the sink cutouts. But this is an open cutout, so maybe won't be so bad. So I got the long pieces going down to support and strengthen the full length, the longest span of the concrete. So I'm getting ready to mix. I'll mix it in my wheelbarrow and just scoop it out and put it in. I'm going to add some of this fiberglass. This I think it's 3-inch fiberglass and into the concrete, but not too much, just to help increase the tensile strength for this 10-inch overhang. I think that's probably the only place I would really need it. Maybe on the corner sections there, just to help keep it from cracking again. But getting ready to mix it up. So here's one bag of concrete and sprinkled some of the 1-inch fibers into it. You want to mix it as little as possible to keep from breaking them up, but I can't remember actually what the instructions say to use, but you guys can look it up. and see what the rate is. I'm probably using less than what's required or what's recommended. We'll mix this up and then lay it all in. Be the first layer or part of the first layer. Okay, I'm in a process of screening the top. I'm at a point now where I can relax a little bit. I was afraid I was going to run out of concrete, but that's I'm going to have plenty. I believe I'll go back and fill in a few low spots with what I think I'm going to have extra for here, but it was quite a bit more number of bags, I guess, than I thought. Do your math before you start, but I think I've got plenty. I just won't be able to fill in my extra spaces. I'll get a couple of bags left extra to do those later. So just continue the screen process, level it out, and then I'm going to vibrate it like for hours. So that's not so fun, but it's got to be done. I'm using my palm sander underneath to vibrate this thing. Watch the bubbles. After about an hour of vibrating, I even used a hammer on the bottom of the board to get some pretty big hits, and then mostly about an hour and 15 minutes, I guess, with the sander, with the palm sander, putting quite a bit of pressure on it just to transfer the vibrations as much as possible. But hour and 15 minutes should be good, hopefully. And I'm going to let it dry. Although, of course, all the water's coming to the top. It's, dripping off. I've wiped down my cabinets, so they're not going to get stained or anything. So it's time to just wait. When this water dries and it gets that matte finish, I'll just take the trowel and smooth it out a little bit, then I'll cover it with some plastic and we'll let it sit for several days. It is 1:30 in the morning. It's not quite dry enough yet to smooth it out like I would like. Some of it is, some of it's not. So I have done the best I can, just smoothing out the stuff. You can see if it's too wet, it picks up like this. So since this is the bottom, I am not going to worry about it too much, and I'm going to leave it like this. It's too wet to cover still. I'm going to cover it in the morning. I'll spray it with some water in the morning and cover it, and maybe I can knock off some of the high spots. But again, since it's the bottom, I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna let her go, and I'll just cover it with plastic. Let it sit for a week. So guess what? It's 5:15 in the morning. The cat woke me up. They need to go outside. So I came down and it was dry enough. I cleaned up the top. I guess didn't clean it up. I just kind of smoothed it out some more with the trowel, and looks pretty good. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not perfect by any means as far as flat. If this was a poured countertop and you weren't going to flip it over, you have a long ways to go, and it would be done differently. So I'm just going to cover it up with plastic and let it sit for several days, probably a week. Here it is after a week with a few forms taken off, all the outside forms. I'll work on the inside forms next. Just want to show you what it looks like. A pretty good little radius there. Forms came off easy. And got a little few pits in the outside, but that's the way it's going to be. It's the way it always is. So there we go. All the molding's off, all the forms off, and now I just kind of shifted this thing a little off of its original place and scraping up the caulking, cleaning it up. Got my little sample pieces there ready to go for staining. Turned out pretty good. There's always pits, like I said, but just cleaning up the caulk and getting ready to flip this thing over this weekend. Now that it's flipped over and slid into place, that wasn't too bad. A fourth person would have been helpful, not even counting the videoer. So fits in place pretty nicely and still drying on this side. So we'll let that keep going. And it's got the overhang. There was one little part where it chipped when it hit the cabinet, when it slid down off the board. But other than that, I'm pretty pleased. Comes out with a few little pits, but I think that's actually just going to add some nice character to it. I'll probably fill that with something to maintain the appearance of the holes, but to seal it up. I'm not sure what that'll be yet, but yeah, other than that, it looks pretty good. So we've got that countertop, we've got the sink countertop, which I've got in there. The sink had to be put in before the countertop was set down. Sink's too big for the doors and to turn it around if it went through the countertop top. Anyway, more to come.